because we've seen a couple of Labour MPs lose their careers because of a group chat.
Can I just say, the Diane Abbott joke was banging.
you don't think he should have been cancelled
No,
for that?
I'm like, that's a great joke.
And the LGB Alliance, you know all about that. I've just outed him.
There's a reason I look like a lesbian, Daniel.
And he's like, I've actually got a gun at the house and I was ready.
What? Hello and welcome to Francis Foster Sorts Your Life Out, the show where I indeed sort your life out. Now, bear in mind, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a physiotherapist, so that means that I know what I'm talking about. So what we do on the show is we sort my audience's problems out. Every week I invite, normally it's a comedian, but we've gone one better. We've got YouTuber, journalist, soon-to-be author. It's Dan Wootten. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm not funny, so how am I going to cope on this show?
It's fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Trust me. We've got questions for you that you are going to be able to sort out.
Okay.
You're going to be able to bring your lived experience, as the kids say, and you're going to be able to tell people what to do. It's going to be exciting.
Okay, I am excited.
Yeah, so let's see. So we're going to have our first one. We're going to have our first one right here. Dear Francis, my new neighbour knocked on my door to introduce themselves. I immediately felt exhausted by the social obligation. Have we all become emotional unavailable, or is that just me?
It's not just you.
Really?
It's definitely not just you.
You come across as someone who's hypersocial, Dan.
And do you think I'm emotionally available?
No.
I mean, look, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? We all have that introvert-extrovert thing going on. But absolutely now, we are annoyed by normal folk. We're annoyed by everyday activities that used to be the gel that would keep us moving. Because absolutely, and hopefully they're not watching, but, you know, when my neighbours invade on my personal time, I feel quite emotionally unavailable to them.
Really? Do you? See, here's the thing. Is that because the way the world has gone? Or is that because you're a man who is, like me, I think we're the same age, in midlife? And that's what just happens. You become a grumpy bastard.
Yeah. I think it is a combination of the two. But certainly we don't need to have those human relations so much, do we? I mean, it was interesting the other day because, I mean, this is quite grim, not really funny, but my neighbour was literally being robbed, right, by these two guys with a drill. And I was desperately trying to call the other neighbours to get them to come out and help as well, and none of them picked up. And I did think one of the neighbours admitted that he had put us all on mute. You know, that thing where there's like no notifications come up. And I thought, seriously, we're about to be killed here. So it is interesting. I think I try and be a little bit more emotionally available, but in reality, it is tough these days because we just want to rush out, grab our food from the delivery driver and desperately hope the neighbour isn't leaving the house at the same time.
Do you live in London?
Yes.
Sadly. That is such a London story. That someone was breaking into your neighbour's flat with a drill and he was like, please, and you were like, please, let's sort this out. And everyone was like, mate, I want you on mute.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
Yes, exactly. And I think he did feel terrible afterwards. And he's like, I've actually got a gun at the house and I was ready. But we were on mute.
What?
I know. That's a whole other story, right?
No. We can't just drop. He's got a gun in the house.
Oh, yeah. Licensed and everything.
Licensed gun?
Yeah.
What,
you don't want to mess with our little cul-de-sac, okay?
What, north, south, east, west? Where do you live?
South London. Southeast London.
So
I've got to be protected by my neighbour with a gun.
You live in South Sea. Now I go, that makes complete sense. Of course you've got a gun in Southeast London.
But I don't want to live in London. I desperately want to get out of London.
Where do you want to live?
I'd love to live in Essex.
In Essex?
Yeah, I'm an Essex boy at heart. My mum was born in Essex.
Yeah.
I think Essex is like a really great sort of place where I feel very aligned to the morals and values and the
of Essex?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Self-starting, self-made, no one embarrassed about... Yeah, that's where my mum was born.
She was
literally born in Basildon.
She was born in Basildon.
Yeah.
You see, I'll be honest with you. I feel sorry for the middle-aged to the to the older gay man in that you had your enclaves.
Yes.
You had Brighton, and that was a place where you could go and you could be yourself and you could let your hair down a little bit. You could have fun, and now it's just been fucking ruined.
Well, it's been taken over by straight people, hasn't it? Like Soho. But here's the thing, Francis. I am so not a typical... Well, actually, I am maybe a typical gay man, but you know most gay people
Do you like Barbara
now...
Streisand?
Oh, of course. Of course, yeah. In that sense, absolutely. Like Celine Dion.
Musical theatre.
Yes. And I did it, and I loved it. And a musical is like my absolute dream night out. So in that way, totally stereotypical. But if you actually look at it as a cultural movement, I am so on the outer. I have zero desire now because you're not viewed as gay in that world. You're LGBTQIA+. Or I was on the Peloton the other day, you know, Peloton? Yeah, I love it. And the instructor started saying, oh, no, we're not gay now, we're queer. And we should all just define as queer. And it's this umbrella term. So the point is, I actually no longer socialize in those LGBTQIA+ enclaves. I have zero interest in it. It's such a small part of who I am. And I actually hate that idea of like, oh, this is our place, so you can all get out. Because the problem is now, if you're part of that place, it means you've got to sign up to all of this extreme ideology.
Well, that's it. So this is what's interesting. It's like, when did becoming gay be political?
I know.
When
Well, I can tell you exactly when it did.
Yes.
I mean, I literally know if that is an actual question.
Yeah, that is an actual question.
So it was in around 2016 because that was when the trans movement became one of those questions of, are you part of our little insider community or are you on the outside of it? And so for me, it was quite interesting because I had always been someone who had worked in the tabloid media, which was always viewed as very homophobic, right?
Oh, absolutely. It used to out people. That was one of its things.
But not in my time in the tabloid media. Actually, by the time I joined the tabloid media, which was 2007 onwards, I was perfectly accepted as being gay. There was no issues. No one outed anyone. You know, all of that stuff was ancient history. And I was also sort of viewed in the gay community as a little bit of like, oh, yeah, this is an interesting curiosity. Quite cool that we've got this gay guy who, you know, because I would have been by far the most senior out gay executive at the Sun newspaper, for example, or the News of the World newspaper, or at the Daily Mail, because they just didn't have out gay executives. So they sort of quite liked me for that, for a little bit. And then there was this change, and it was like, we have been hijacked now by Owen Jones. And he is our God. And obviously for me, I was like, well, I think he's revolting in so many ways. And if that's what I have to do to sign up to being part of a community, of course I'm not part of it. And then, I mean, they soon, and this is like 2016 onwards, despised me. I mean, I almost became like worse than a straight person because I was a gay person that didn't sign up to that ideology.
But you know what's so... this is the moment that I found particularly sad. Is like when all of this stuff started happening, gay men, you didn't have a good party without a gay dude.
Yeah.
Even like in the 90s and the early noughties where it was still kind of, oh, like that's a gay guy, whatever. Like, they would be so much more fun.
Yes.
You'd sit there, they'd frequently be drinking, chain smoking their way, and they would say outrageous things. And you're like, can you say that? Well, I guess he just did. That's hilarious.
And then gay went woke.
And then now it's just like, and you're just going, you guys used to be fun.
With a nose ring and a perm and horrible tattoos and like a sheer t-shirt. Do you know what I mean? Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
All of these woke gay men walk around in sort of see-through t-shirts.
You used to be stylish.
Yeah. I know. So I'm not part of that. I don't want to be.
No, I don't blame you.
So I think I've got the best sides of being a gay man. That sense of fun, dressing really well, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Sharp suit.
But no, so look, I think there has been a huge change, and that's why I would hate to be somewhere where gay people Because, well, it's not gay. That's the thing, actually. I've got to be careful about this because it isn't gay people, right?
Yeah.
It's not lesbian people either.
Yeah.
And it's not even bisexual people. You know, there's the LGB movement and the LGB Alliance. You know all about that. And
have you seen me?
I've just outed him. I've outed him.
There's a reason I look like a lesbian, Daniel.
Yes, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
but
I
in
do.
fact, you really do.
I
You
do.
could be the leader of the SNP.
Oi. No, I was thinking if TRIGGERnometry goes tits up tomorrow, I'll be a Sue Perkins tribute.
Yes. But I don't mean you're part of it for that reason. I mean, you know all about it for political reasons. But actually, there's more a cultural reason. It's like LGBT people are still fun, not politically correct, don't look ridiculous. But for me, it's more just like, God, I just want to live my life. Yes, I happen to be gay. That's a really small part of who I am. I'm in a monogamous, normal, I mean, they call it, I hate this, but they call it heteronormative. Maybe I'm a heteronormative gay. But no, so it's, I would hate to be part of some sort of like community because it isn't a community anymore. It's almost like a cult.
Yeah.
Because you have to sign up to a cult without wanting to get too political on you, but, you know, to a cult where you literally agree with young girls having their breasts chopped off. And if you don't agree with that, you're out of the cult. And not just you out of the cult, you are like an enemy. It's nuts.
It is nuts.
It really is nuts. And I don't want to be around those people. I really don't.
But you know what it's given rise to? And I don't know if you would identify as this, the gay conservative, who are actually the most fun.
Yes.
Because conservatives are they're kind of like, there's stuff that I go, of course you're right, but me, you're tedious. You know, they start talking and they go, borders are important. You go, yeah, they are. And then they start talking about other things and you're like, oh, God, how do I get out of this? And then they talk about religion and you're like, oh, God, I want to eat my own eyeballs. But the gay conservatives are fun.
Totally. I mean, who wouldn't want a night out with Douglas Murray, right?
It's brilliant.
Totally.
Just don't pay the bar bill. That's all I'd say.
Or Darren Grimes. Who
Yeah.
wants, you want a night out with these people. No, gay conservatives are great, but I would argue gay conservatives don't view themselves as gay conservatives. They just view themselves as fun conservatives.
I'd say that's an oxymoron, Dan. Anyway, so what do we do with this?
Well, I actually think it's totally fine to be emotionally unavailable in this day and age. You've got to be. You really have to protect yourselves these days.
Yeah.
Focus on the people that matter. But I guess my warning is, give a little bit more time for your neighbours because there's a practical reason.
Yeah.
Because when the guys come with the drill, you don't want to be on mute.
No, you don't.
Do you see what I mean? So maybe just with your neighbours, open up a little bit more.
Yeah. That's a very South London word of advice. When the people come for you with the drill. I'm like, there's people listening to this going, mate, I've never seen or heard that, but come and live in South London. That's where I'm from.
Oh, I mean, look, I love my little community, but I want out of London.
Of course.
Badly.
But it makes you interesting.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
No.
Well, you wouldn't get that in Essex, would you?
Probably not.
No, you wouldn't. Just a healthy odd stabbing. Anyway, so let's do this. Dear Francis, my best friend had a baby, and everyone is acting like she's so brave. But all she did was get knocked up and give birth like a million people before her. Why does this annoy me so much?
It's interesting, isn't it? There is that little cohort of people who, when they have a baby, think that the whole world stops and that they are the first person to ever have had a baby. However, I sort of get it because once I became an uncle and then I saw up close, actually, from my sister, just the blood, sweat, and tears required to be a parent. My God, I had a new respect for you guys.
Yeah, I'm not a parent, but even so, like, because when I was a teacher, there'd be times, because people would be like, oh, it's a parent's fault with certain kids. And yeah, of course, but some kids are just fucking pricks.
And it's hard.
Like, you could give...
So hard.
Let's say you and your partner want to have a child, and he could turn out, or she could turn out to be a dickhead, and you do everything right. Some people are just dickheads.
I know. But I think what this is more about is that issue of when you lose your friend to a child.
Yeah.
And I guess the older I've got, the more I understand that. And acceptance is almost necessary in order for you to not lose the friendship. Because if you hold on to this sense of anger about, yeah, but everyone has kids, then it's going to ruin the friendship, you see.
It's also as well, like, people move on. You can't be going out to clubs and doing ketamine at the age of 42.
Well, I never did that, to be honest. But yeah, I do know what you mean. And I think another big exception, and weirdly, it was being cancelled for me, that actually really crystallized this. And it was hard for me, but I was one of those people that always tried to hang on to previous relationships, right? I thought, no, I want to still be friends with the person who I worked with when I was 22 years old, because we had such a great connection. But our lives have gone in totally different directions. We live in different cities. They have 6 kids and are on the hard left. And I'm doing something very different with my life. So they're all a little bit unsure about that anyway. And when I was cancelled, I realized those people ain't going to be there for me. And so I do think part of it is realizing, can you actually have a relationship with someone from your past if things have really changed? Although I would get the sense from this letter, this is just my sense, but from this letter, actually, they are fond and affectionate of this person and they do want them in their life. They're just a little bit annoyed. And so I'd say just get on the train. You need to support your friend with this baby.
I agree. And everyone is acting like she's so brave. I think it's a man that's written this, because I tell you why.
Do you? See, I thought it was a woman.
Why?
That's so interesting. In fact, I'm convinced this is a woman.
Okay.
Can we find out?
No, we can't. But I think it's a man, because only a man would say all she did was get knocked up and give birth. I'm like, every woman that I've ever spoken to who's spoken about giving birth, and my friends who've had partners or wives who've given birth, when they talk about the birth, they all look at me, and even the most chef London are like, they look like they've come back from Nam. You know, they go white, the eyes start getting glazed. One of my friends even described it as a medieval experience. So why did you think it was a woman?
Well, I think it's a woman because I just don't think a man would feel this way.
That's interesting.
Do you see what I think? It really is. It's a woman who hasn't had kids, and that's a big issue. I have a lot of female friends who have decided not to have kids.
Why?
And that bit, like, we're an interesting generation, aren't we? Because I always say this: our generation as girls, right, growing up, so like born in the 80s, that type of period, girls were told you can be whatever you want to do. And that's great. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And you do not have to compromise. You can have exactly the same career as Francis can or as Dan can. And in so many ways, that was true. But what it meant is I had a lot of very high-functioning, high-performing, very successful female friends who absolutely killed it in their corporate careers or their journalistic careers, their media careers, and had this like come to mama moment, quite literally, when they hit their mid-30s.
Wow, yeah.
And they realize, oh God, maybe I can't have it all because have I left it too late? And my sense is that this is one of those women because they struggle the most to then see their friends change, because all of a sudden, once you have a child, your priorities, especially in terms of career, flip.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
And there's an envy there, is what you're saying.
I'm not even saying necessarily like an envy, but I just think it's a female thought. I think men just accept that life changes once you've had a child.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas there's a new generation of women who are making an active decision not to, and then it becomes difficult when all of their world around them changes.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when my mates have had kids, I'm just accepted that we're never going to talk again.
Those pub visits are over.
Those are done.
Forever.
No, but I'm genuinely happy for them. Like one of my best mates, he told me that his wife was pregnant after 2 weeks, which is, And he was just, I was so happy for him because I knew they'd been trying for ages. And it was like, this is what you've wanted. I'm so happy.
But do you accept that he's lost to you?
Oh, yeah, he's dead to me.
He's gone.
He's gone. Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah,
gone.
yeah. You know, it's like, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. He's dead. He is no more.
But you shouldn't speak about Constantine. He's in the other room.
He is in the other room. God bless him. No, like you just be. Oh, also, I think you have to be with life. You have to be pragmatic, and you have to accept that people are going to change, and that's part of life. In relationships, is changing with people.
Yeah, totally. And don't hang on to relationships that aren't working for you. It's tough, but in reality, as I say, it was a brutal experience. But the thing about being cancelled is you do really realise that. You really realise there's a very small group of people around you who really care.
Yeah.
And those are the people you should be investing your time into.
Do you know, there was a great joke by Louis C.K. where he talked about his cancellation. And he was like, the worst thing about cancellation is that you find out who your friends really are. And it's never the ones you want. You're like, you're my friend? Oh, come on, man. What, you? Oh, please. Like, I wanted him or her. No, it's you. You're my friend. Oh, for fuck's sake.
I was just grateful for any of them at that point, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go, not that I've been cancelled, but when you go through moments where you're just, or attempted cancellation, whatever else, it's so interesting. It's such an intense experience.
Well, it is. I mean, Jordan Peterson, actually, when he was speaking to Lawrence Fox, after everything that went on with us, he described cancellation as the worst thing other than receiving a terminal illness diagnosis, which sounds like very dramatic and over the top. But weirdly, I do agree with him. And again, this is quite dark for the comedy show, but I once received like an incorrect terminal diagnosis.
Really?
Yeah, which is really nuts. We won't go into it here.
Yeah.
But the point is, I sort of know a little bit about what that's like.
Yeah.
And then I know what it's like to be totally cancelled. And I would actually agree, like the only thing that came close to the cancellation was the incorrect terminal diagnosis. Obviously, when I found out it was incorrect, that was great. But, there was a few weeks in between. And it's because it touches every aspect of your life. Do you see what I mean? There's nothing that isn't touched by a cancellation.
I agree. I remember when my mum got wrongly diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was such a... It felt like... Because you have an armour that you walk through life with. We all do. And people say things and you have to develop it, otherwise you can't function, either professionally or personally or in whatever field you go into. But I remember when Mum had that and I was teaching in a very rough school in East London, it felt like every part of my armour had just been ripped off and all I had exposed to the world was just vulnerable flesh.
Yes. And imagine if it's your mum,
Yeah.
like as in how she feels.
Yeah.
That's even a whole other level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do agree. But I guess the thing is that you have to look at these situations and think, well, what's a positive that comes out of it?
Yeah.
One of those positives is, well, who is actually genuine?
Yeah.
And so I'm quite lucky to have that.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So basically, you've got to grow up and you've got to accept, really sorry, people change. You're going to have a baby. And you know what? You're probably going to love the little one. Yes. They are kind of adorable when they're not behaving like little pricks. Here's an interesting one. Dear Francis, I have a group chat with mates, but every time I type something, I overthink it, delete it, and say nothing. Why am I like this?
The tyranny of the group chat. Because we've seen, haven't we, in recent weeks, a couple of Labour MPs lose their careers, lose their reputation because of a group chat. And it's got me thinking a lot.
Can I just say, the Diane Abbott joke was banging.
you don't think he should have been cancelled
no,
for that?
I'm like, that's a great joke.
Well, I have a really interesting thing on a group.
Did you
group
find that
chat.
funny?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been really torn on this story.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, group chats are a form of private communication.
Absolutely.
And Toby Young, someone who we respect, head of the Free Speech Union, is very much like, come on, people are now saying that this guy should be prosecuted for a joke about Diane Abbott. Like, that is ridiculous. Yeah. And I do agree with that. I've had like this really interesting like journey. Hate to be cliched, but journey with group chats, because there was a period, especially when I was in the mainstream media, where I was like, oh, goodness me, like I'm in these group chats and people say crazy things, and am I going to be cancelled one day for being in the group chat? Now, as it turned out, I was cancelled for something else, so now I don't give a shit. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, I don't care. But it is interesting, and I do sometimes worry that people can be tarred with what someone else says in a chat that you just happen to be in. So in some ways, this person has been quite sensible in the sense that they're thinking about what they're saying. But I don't really think they're too worried about being cancelled, are they? They're more worried about looking stupid.
I
or having the piss ripped out of them by their mates.
I think it's a combination of all of these things. I just think we live in a time now, and I consider myself very lucky. I mean, I've been through my own stuff and, things. I mean, I remember when I went on Rogan's podcast for the first time, he said to me, Francis, why do all UK comedians suck? And I laughed and I went, ha, they do. Now, this didn't go down very well, Dan.
No.
People got very, very, very angry. And the reality was, I misspoke. I don't think all UK comedians
What
suck.
about Ricky Gervais?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think Ricky's a hero of mine.
Yeah.
He's a genuine hero of mine.
Yeah.
I think The Office is one of the greatest sitcoms ever made.
Yes.
Extras I love to pick. He's a hero. He's a hero. There's so many. There's stand-up comedians Simon Evans, a brilliant stand-up comedian. Jeff Innocent, lots and lots of people who I really.
Simon Evans, very scary in real life.
He is. He's so intelligent.
He, when we were at GB News, he just terrified me.
Yeah.
He was very much like, do not speak to me type vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Very talented guy.
Yeah.
I was a little bit scared of him.
Yeah. But he was incredibly talented. But I didn't mean it to like that. There was a more nuanced point there. But it was 2 hours into a conversation. The first time I was on Rogan, the adrenaline hit. I wanted to be funny and say something back. Someone clipped it. Someone, ironically, a trans comedian.
Of course.
And then it went semi-viral, and then people piled on, and then people tried to get me fired from my agent. People were saying that I was racist. I don't know how that equates to being racist. But anyway, and all of this happened over an innocuous, off-the-cuff.
Yeah, which was a little joke.
Yeah,
really.
which was a little joke.
Or a little shock factor comment.
Yeah.
Which was used to illustrate a wider point, but you didn't mean it literally.
And because it was clipped and all the rest of it. And so I do understand, because there was a part of me, Dan, even now, I took part in a comedy roast where I was roasted by two of my mates who were comedians, and they're going to put it out. And then I'm feeling kind of anxious about it. I'm like, why does someone clips that out of context? And even though it's comedy, it might go viral. And then I still feel it. I don't want to use the term PTSD, because PTSD is something very real and very serious. But it sort of feels like a tenth of that, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that we now live in a world, in all seriousness, where, especially if you're in the United Kingdom, but this applies actually to lots of countries, where what you say can have massive consequences.
Yeah.
Like consequences in terms of losing your entire career, consequences in terms of being sued, consequences in terms of being locked up.
I mean, you know this better than anyone.
Yeah, totally. Although I would argue that in this case, I think it is more about having that confidence with a group of people to actually say what you really think. Because in a group chat, it's got a different vibe, doesn't it? I mean, sometimes the worst thing in a group chat, and I'm sure you've had this happen, I've had this happen, is when you make a point that you think is quite salient, or you share something that you're quite proud of, radio silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even a thumbs up.
Yep.
And how do you come back from that?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I am mortified. Not one person in this group chat even gave me a pity thumbs up.
Yeah.
Or a pity love heart.
Yeah.
So I do get it, because I think people are so overwhelmed by information these days, and when you're putting something in a group chat, does it actually have a point that people are going to be interested in? And maybe we all should think a bit more like that, because I have to say, I'm in some of these group chats, and they're great. Do you know what I mean? I'm in group chats about, farming and, really important issues. But my God, you can be overwhelmed so quickly. And then you miss the really good stuff, right? Because so much rubbish is coming through too.
And it's also, I think, if you want to make people laugh and you want to make a joke, it's about being in the moment. It's about being sharp and quick and saying something off the cuff. You ain't always going to get it right.
No.
And there's a time where people go...
And is it worth it sometimes?
I don't know.
Is it worth it?
But then you go... I mean, if we all start thinking about that, what a boring place that we live in.
I mean, I always say it. But that's my problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's my problem too.
That is my
evidently.
problem.
Yeah.
I always say, I will always, if I'm thinking in my head, right, even just to a friend, one-on-one, we're having a chat, like, I'll always say the thing that in my head I think, oh, maybe I should I say that?
Yeah.
I say it.
But
so I sort of respect people who don't.
I don't know.
I
couldn't live like that I couldn't live a closeted existence like that. And I think closeted is the appropriate term because you are denying a fundamental part of yourself and you're living a life that is untrue to who you actually are.
Yes.
I couldn't do that. I genuinely couldn't. I had a friend actually, sadly passed away, he's a comedian. And he was talking to me. He was saying to me, Francis, I really respect you because you're brave. And this was when he was receiving end of treatment for cancer. God bless his soul. And I was like, what do you mean? And he went, oh, because when my friends come round, and my comedian friends and liberal friends come round, I hide my Douglas Murray books. I hide my right-leaning books, my libertarian. And he goes, and because I'm just scared that, that I'm going to lose everything. And, it was so interesting because when he died, people went, he was nice. And he was lovely, kind and warm, and he was all of those things. And I had such affection for him. But it didn't mean that. They meant you didn't challenge me. You didn't push me. You didn't say something that I felt uncomfortable with.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because do you really want your legacy to be one of, he was nice? I mean, maybe. For some people, that is really important.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean... I guess if you say that thing that you have been worried about saying, you will hopefully usually find that more people agree with you than don't, and are maybe waiting for you to say it.
Yeah.
And if we were all a bit more like that, we would probably have a much healthier and happier society.
Yeah.
But it is hard.
It is hard. I really...
And it comes with a big consequence,
But, I understand, but you can't run away from life.
No.
You can't run away. You've got to just go out and say what you think and stand by it and accept you're going to be wrong and accept that people may not like it and blah,
and your
blah.
friends are going to mock you. That's fine.
And that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine. And you're going to say something and people are like, oh my God, like really? And you're like, oh yeah. Okay. But that's life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how are you going to learn?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's learning the hard way.
Oh, me, Jesus Christ. I was looking at a picture of me from 7 years ago. I've learned the hard way, Dan. Have we got time for one more, Jack? Yep. Okay. Dear Francis, I recently tried to explain to my dad what a podcast is. He called it the radio for people who think they're important. I see you, Jack. I haven't stopped thinking about that.
Wow. This is so... Okay. So, the first thing I'm going to say is...
Jack is getting getting a pay cut.
Is I was, and I am boastful about this, I was like such an early adopter of podcasts.
Yes.
So, like, podcasts have been in my life since 2004, like on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you listen to in 2004?
Oh, hardly anything at that point. But it's because I'd moved from New Zealand.
Okay,
and
go on.
So what there was in those early days were quite a lot of shows that were on news channels across the world. Do you see what I mean? Rather than like what we necessarily view as podcasts today. It was like a lot of repurposed content.
Yeah.
But it was awesome because I got to listen to like radio shows that I loved from around the world that had like a podcast flavor to them. And some of them were like really, really amazing. Actually, there was this one. Have you heard of an Australian comedian? I mean, he's very liberal, but called John Safran.
No.
So he did this incredible show with a priest, with like an elderly Australian priest called Father Bob. And it was really the start of what I thought was the podcast revolution, which is the radio show was not really listened to, but the podcast was. And then the same thing happened with like Simon Mayo and Mark Commode on Radio 5 Live with their podcast. But in recent weeks and months, for me, it's been really interesting because it's like, I actually don't view my show, Dan Wootten Outspoken, as a podcast, really, but it does fit into what YouTube now considers a podcast, right? Because I'm just making a show.
Yes.
And I was really happy, actually. I was looking at some figures the other day, and actually, you know, as many people are now watching my show on TV as they are on their phones. And it's like, would you really watch a podcast on TV? You know, because my experience of podcasts is I love walking with a podcast. It's a very intimate experience. I listened to you and Constantine last night in bed. Can you believe that?
Of
That's
course,
as
mate.
intimate as you can possibly get.
You know what people said to me? A few people. They said to me, Francis, I really love your podcast. I'm like, thank you. They go, yeah, I listen to it. It really helps me sleep.
I see. I knew you'd be offended by that, but you
No,
shouldn't
I'm not.
be.
I'm not.
You shouldn't be, because I love that. It's like I love listening to a good podcast, but then so I was listening to the Kemi Bader Trigonometry interview last night, and I haven't finished it because I did fall asleep, but I didn't want to fall asleep. But it's a different experience. Now, to me, that's what a podcast is. A podcast is something that's intimate. You take it with you, you listen to it. Now, other people may have a very different definition of what a podcast is. They might say it's long-form content, because like my show, it's actually not long-form content. It's an episode which contains lots of different segments, you see. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying. I mean, this was a very funny question because it is true. Yes, you say, but I guess I would say I'm not important because I wouldn't describe what I'm doing as a podcast. But weirdly, now it is put into the category of being a podcast. Whereas I just think I'm making a show.
Yeah.
Like, is this a podcast?
This is
we
a
on
podcast.
Right now?
I'd say this is a podcast. I think
Trigonometry is a podcast.
Trigonometry, I think, is different. I actually think, here we go. I actually do think trigonometry is important, but I think trigonometry is important because the mainstream media have failed and somebody had to step up and do something that they should be doing.
But would you watch trigonometry on TV? Because it's beautifully produced.
Yeah, I would do. Yeah. So, but that's...
And you want people to.
Yeah, I want people to watch it on TV. Look, it's however people want to consume it is entirely up to them. But yeah, I want people to watch it because we put a lot of effort into the visuals and it's the package. But
some people just listen, right?
But some people just listen, and that's fine. Like I never watched YouTube, ironically enough. I was always a podcast guy. But if I listened to Joe, I listened to him on a pod. All of these people I listen to on pods. Because I just prefer the audio medium. That's just how I am.
And what's interesting is people who like listen on Spotify, and this is certainly my experience, like I listen to podcasts on Spotify, I watch content on YouTube.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? It's a bit of a different experience, even though that can be the same person, the same content.
Yeah, exactly. But I much prefer it because you just strip everything away and it's just the words and the conversation and the content. I don't like that term content, but in the information or what you're gaining from the pod.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting that this person is clearly making a point that podcasters in some ways think they are elevated, because I would actually argue that the people who think they're most important are radio presenters. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
Like Radio 4, they think they're so important. Like Amal Raj, Nick Robinson, they believe they're important. The hosts of Times Radio, which like no one is listening to, they believe they're really important and they have to do this rolling service. Like, I think podcasters are very, very different, because I think podcasters, the whole thing is, like, we don't really think we're important. We know that what we're doing is very different to being in the mainstream media. Believe me, I mean, I was in the mainstream media for 20 years. When you're in the mainstream media, you have this cloak of superiority and importance, because it's like, oh, I'm working in a big building and I've got big bosses behind me. I think the beautiful thing about podcasts is you strip all of that away. You strip all of the stuff that makes being in the media like important away.
Yeah.
There's no expense accounts.
Yeah.
There's no bosses telling you what to do. There's no perks. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I view podcasting in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
But I can see that if someone hasn't listened to podcasts and are listening to all of this chat about, podcasts changed the American election, which they did.
Yes, absolutely.
But I can understand that might be viewed as being a bit holier than thou.
And pompous.
Like podcasters, and putting themselves on a pedestal. But obviously the irony is, God, look at your guys' evolution on TRIGGERnometry.
Yeah.
It's like you started as sort of on the ground from the bottom up without any bells and whistles as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
And to me, if you had thought you were important and you had an opportunity to do this, you could have said, "Oh no, we'll go and do our show on GB News."
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I sort of view it in a different way. I think podcasters are usually, especially people like you guys who haven't been cancelled. Obviously, there's a lot of us like who are doing podcasts because we've been cancelled from the mainstream media, and that's a big thing.
Of course it is. Yeah.
Lara Logan. There's a Megyn Kelly. There's a million you could think about. So it's interesting. But I do think this is funny, though.
Yeah, it is funny. And it's
'Cause
funny
I get the point.
because there's a little bit of truth to it.
There is a little bit of truth, and maybe I've been over defensive with this. But it's funny because I think the people who annoy me most are radio presenters.
There we go.
And it's a dying medium.
It is just a little jab to end, just a little one in the ribs.
Oh yeah, big time.
But Dan, thank you so much for coming. Oh, we've got one more. Okay,
great.
let's do one more. Okay. Dear Francis, my co-worker insists on saying ciao instead of goodbye, despite being from Manchester and never having been to Italy. Why does this infuriate me so much? I'm going to be harsh, Dan. You look like a man who may have flirted with the ciao in your...
You! No, I am so angry about you saying that. I've never been more angry with you. No, because I'm reading this thinking, no. Nothing would annoy me more than that. This is the one letter that I cannot bring any context to it. Like, no, this is super annoying.
You've never flirted with ciao?
No, and I would immediately judge someone who did. And so the fact that you think I'm the type of guy that say ciao, no.
Just say ciao to the camera and let the...
No. Do you know me at all, Francis?
I'm saying late 20s, Dan.
No.
When you're in your fabulous phase.
No. But it's so funny because I used to have a woman who I worked with at News of the World.
Yeah.
Lovely woman. Beth was her name. But every time, and I genuinely mean this, every single time I saw her, she'd come and say, "G'day, mate." And it's like, I'm not Australian, number one. And it's very annoying.
Yeah.
And the thing with people who say ciao is they think they're the height of sophistication too.
But that's kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah, but annoying.
Yeah.
I would be annoyed. I'm just saying. I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
No, I would never say it.
There we go. It's good.
Sort of like a nouveau riche, like 90s thing, isn't it? People who said ciao.
Ciao, yeah, it was.
You were a snag. Do you remember that? Sensitive new age guys? It was
No.
you don't know snags. So this was before woke.
Well,
right?
okay.
So a snag would definitely say ciao. So it was in like the 90s when it was political correctness was first coming in, and it was that first little wave of like men getting in touch with their feminine side a little bit, and it was you would be called a snag, a sensitive new age guy, and certainly a sensitive new age guy would have said ciao. So these were straight men. You see,
Really?
who were just getting in touch with. Yeah, it was like a 90s thing.
See,
But you've never been a snag. Quite obviously.
I don't know.
No. Yeah.
No, but I was, when I was for 90s, I was kind of woke. I had a friend who was bisexual in the time when, listen, I went to school near Croydon. That was a big thing. I was like,
I had a friend who was
bisexual.
Yeah, that doesn't make you a snag.
That doesn't make me a snag.
No, a snag, because a snag would be like, you might wear a little bit of foundation.
Oh, fuck
and,
that,
You
no.
know, like,
Yeah.
it was, it was the start of the woke culture.
Oh, okay.
Just at the end of like at the end of the 90s.
At the end of lad culture.
Yeah, like, so you probably would have described, like, Hugh Grant as a snag.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though he was a lad,
Yeah, he was.
he was also a snag. He was a shag.
He was a shagger. Good old Hugh. Good old Hugh. But Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. Plug, what are you doing? So you're doing your show, which is great.
I'll just say ciao. No, I won't. Yes. So Dan Wootten Outspoken, not a podcast, just a show.
Yeah. And what do you do on Dan Wootten Outspoken?
On YouTube. So it's a daily news show, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, Monday to Friday, and it really is about the news of the day, very often that the mainstream media won't be covering, with really interesting people.
Perfect. Guys, thank you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe. Tell a friend about it. Make sure to share. And we'll see you next week with a fabulous guest. Thank you.